Welcome to Catalytic Leadership, the podcast designed to help leaders intentionally grow and thrive. Here is your host, author, and leadership and executive coach, Dr. William Attaway.
Hey, it's William, and welcome to today's episode of the Catalytic Leadership Podcast. Each week, we tackle a topic related to the field of leadership. My goal is to ensure that you have actionable steps you can take from each episode to grow in your own leadership. I believe, like Craig Rochelle has said many times, that when a leader gets better, everybody benefits. Your team, your department, your customers, your clients, your spouse, your kids, everybody. Each week, we spotlight leaders from a variety of fields, locations, and organizations. My goal is for you to see that leaders can be catalytic no matter where they are or what they lead. I draw inspiration from the stories and journeys of these leaders, and I hear from many of you that you do too. Let's jump in to today's interview. It is an honor to have Steve Brossman on the podcast today. Steve is a former national professional track champion, 9-time Amazon best-selling author in marketing and sales. He has 20 years TV and video experience, including hosting his own network TV show, and he's been an executive producer for Warner Brothers. Steve has spoken in 15 countries and trained over 65,000 entrepreneurs, professionals, and business owners to stand out in their market. Last year, he was selected and published with 40 of the world's most innovative marketers. Steve currently helps business owners, sales professionals, and entrepreneurs to attract high-quality clients and increase their conversion rates on their sales calls without any pushy sales techniques. Steve's personal mission in life is to help people exceed their own personal and professional expectations through innovative strategies, inspiration, and support. Steve, it is such a joy to have you. Thanks for being on the show today.
Well, it is great to be here. I'm excited to where this goes. So let's rock straight into it, buddy.
I love it. I would love for you to share some of your story, Steve, with our listeners, particularly around your journey and your development as a leader. How did you get started?
Good question. I'm going to go back before I always ever go back. In primary school, which I don't know whether it's younger elementary school or whatever it was, I was pretty good at sport. I was a nice kid and I did okay at school. And somehow I ended up with, I was school captain. And then the interesting thing with that was, and a lot of people find it hard to believe now, that back then I couldn't even read in public. As a school captain, we had a big assembly coming up and we did a practice for it. And I was that bad at saying my 5 lines that they gave it to me to read. And I was that bad at reading my 5 lines that the principal walked across in front of the whole school, snatched it out of my hand and says, I'll give it to the girl to read. Now, guess somewhere, yeah. I wish it had happened now. I would have been able to sue him for millions. But back then, the best I could do was make up a good story to my mates and say, hey, did you see how I got out of that? But anyhow. That was, went through high school and I was a sports jock, as you alluded to, but I joined the debating team because that was never going to happen to me again. And I was school captain in high school as well. And mainly because I guess my leadership style, even back then, was inclusive. Yeah, I was the sports guy, the jock, but very inclusive of the whole year. Yeah, all the nerds, the geeks, and all of those, we got them all in together. And I guess, 50 years on, we go to our school reunion. Basically, the only people who don't turn up are dead. We had such an inclusiveness, and I didn't know till years later that was it. But I left school, become a professional athlete, and that was going to be my life. I was training for the Los Angeles Olympics, getting ready for that. And then all of a sudden, bang, it all happened. I crushed 3 discs in my back, and you don't run real well with a bad back. No. So 1 minute you're 10 foot tall and bulletproof, and the next can't get out of bed. And it was a choice back then. I was defined. I was, the local town hero, the champion at athletics and the champion at rugby league, and all of a sudden that was taken away. And just lying there, I made a conscious decision was, well, who am I next? Who am I next? And I took full responsibility of what happened, doing too much of the wrong things in the training and all that sort of stuff. We didn't have Dr. Google back then, or Coach Google. I just threw everything at it, and gee, my body didn't handle it. But that was the first thing. As we're talking about leadership here, and the direction I'd like to explore with you is how to create your own internal leadership first, so others want to follow. And
good.
The first thing I did was I accept full responsibility. I could have been, I was about to go to the Olympics, but through rehab, I fell in love with the fitness industry, and I looked at the way people were doing things, and I thought I could do it differently. I could do it better. I was a cocky young kid, and we risked everything for it. And I was right, I did. And that's where I got to travel the world, and I franchised kids clubs into 5 countries and a weight loss program into 2 countries. And that's where I cut my teeth on learning what I'm doing and what I'm teaching now. And it was way back in 84 that the framework for what I'm teaching that is cut through now, that people don't realize, all it is just some of the mediums and the language is different, but the principles are still the same. And so, we're going back to leadership as well. Don't be afraid to stand up. My first book was actually Stand Up, Stand Out, or Stand Aside. It's not just stick your head up and have a look. It's like fully, if you believe in something, completely stand up and have the others follow, not just, yell from the trenches, hey guys, you should do this, because they won't follow you unless you are a good leader yourself and you have total belief in what you do. So that's the story to where I got started and actually formulated a lot of my beliefs and philosophies in business and leadership.
That's fascinating, Steve, because it doesn't follow a patterned trajectory. I went to school, I studied this, I climbed the corporate ladder step by step until I reached the pinnacle of success. You started flat on your back.
Yeah. I'm working with a client right now. We're talking about the sawtooth of life. And this is going to be his philosophy now. And we start off before we get to school. We become the king of the family of what's left. And then we go to, whether it's preschool or kindergarten, whatever you call it, and then you go to the bottom again. Then you work your way to the top, and then you go to the next level of school, and then you're back at the bottom. And then you go to the next level of school, and you're back at the bottom. And then you go to college, and you're back at the bottom, and you climb up, and then you get back out into the work life or different organization. There is the sawtooth of life, and there is no direct approach, and it's how you handle each of those ups and downs, because they're always there. They've got to be there. And how could you be the leader at any part of your journey? That's the true leader. You can come in a brand new corporation, starting in the mailroom, and be the leader. And I wrote about this in, I think about 3 books ago, Your Personal Enterprise. It's how do you create you as your own personal enterprise, whether you're the head of a major organization or an employee. If you can create your own personal enterprise and your own personal operating system to stand out, then you'll get on well anywhere in life.
That's brilliant. I also love that you took ownership. You didn't say, I'm a victim of my circumstances. There's nothing I can do. I just have to sit here and whine and complain and think about what could have been. You took ownership here.
That's what made it heal very quickly. I haven't had a day without pain since, but I mean, the emotional heal is that I took ownership. I knew what happened. I knew why it happened. It wasn't, and I was a fairly major contributing factor to it. And that's what I have to do. That's what everybody should do as an internal leader, is like, well, what did I do to contribute to this situation? And the first thing that I was looking at or thinking about while I was lying there was, well, who do I become now? Who's the new Steve Brossman? Who's the ex sports jock, the ex this? So by the time I sort of came back out into the world, I wasn't playing football anymore. I wasn't running. I did make later comebacks, but not to the level that I was. And it was a whole new me. And the interesting thing, and I'll share this with you, every year and every project, every year I don't do New Year's resolutions. I set my goals and reevaluate, and I pick out 3 words to live by for that year. But every time I write something down that I want to achieve, the next thing is, who do I have to become to achieve that? Not what do I have to do?
That's good.
It is, who do I have to become? And I'll share this with your listeners. They can probably tell I'm an Aussie by now. if you haven't by now, well, hey, I do come from Sydney, Australia. And in the peak of COVID, January last year, it was, I decided, well, I'm going to move most of my focus and business to North America. And I had one sort of introduction into one networking group to get started. And, in Australia, I was a reasonable fish in a smallish pond and quite comfortable, but going to take on the big boys, going to take on, the country that was, 20, 30 times bigger than Australia, against some of the gods, not against them, but to be there, it was as scary as all hell. But I said, what are my 3 words? Belief, grow, and leverage. And the first thing was, I had to believe in myself, which was as scary as all hell. But you know what? I had to do it. And then grow, then I had to leverage. And I teach people now that within 11 months, it was a 6-figure business to get started from zero, no paid ads, networking, foreign country, middle of the pandemic.
Wow.
So, there was some internal leadership to keep pushing myself, but then also to have the belief to stand up and say, well, I can lead some of you as well. And that in itself was a major growth journey for me.
Now, I often talk about how you are the hardest person you will ever lead. You're the most difficult person that you will ever lead. How do you get up? What do you do? Is there a daily habit that's part of your life where you say, today, I'm gonna focus on this. Today, I'm gonna focus on this aspect of leading well. What does your rhythm look like?
I have a set, non-negotiable first 5 minutes. Before I get out of bed, and it's always normally by 5 a.m. And I do this because many days I'm actually on the bike by 5:45. But this is a non-negotiable. I'll wake up. I'll just be still. I'll just do a mindset check-in. And then my feet do not hit the ground. Non-negotiable. Do not hit the ground until I have found at least one thing to be excited about. Do not. It's like, what is one thing? Stuff goes on. I mean, I'm a very positive person, but I don't say that life is, all happiness and roses. There's stuff that always goes on, but there's always one thing that I get out of bed that I know, hey, I'm excited about that today. Now, with my health and fitness background, I know that through the night I've been shallow breathing. So, and I've also been dehydrating, because every time you take a breath out, a lot of people don't realize that when you breathe against a cold mirror, you see the condensation, the fog there. That happens every breath, not just when you walk up to the mirror. It happens every breath. So you're losing that. So the first thing I do is oxygenate and hydrate. I'll have half a large glass of water, depends on what day. There'll be lemon and other little things in it. And I'll do a deep breathing pattern. In, hold, out, hold. And while I'm doing that, I'm doing cross patterning, opposite hand to knee, little marching on the spot. Now, with a background in kinesiology, I know that switches the brain on. That's part of the brain gym exercise. And that just gives it a brain zap to integrate both hemispheres of the brain. So I've hit the brain, I've hit the body, and then I just sit down, I get my coffee, I sit down and journal before I touch anything. No social media, no nothing. So I got the 4 B's that I live by in that order: brain, body, brand, business. So the brain and the body is first. The body, I'll go for a ride, or if it's a little later, I've got a gym here at home. If you don't take care of the body, you fall apart. And then it's the brand and the business. So yeah, you've asked me about my morning routine. It's non-negotiable.
Well, and it gives you the results that you want, right?
I get up every day excited.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you say, I'm not getting up until I am.
And it's not fake. It's like, well, I got to watch it. Yeah, I got that today. That was great. Yeah, let's get into it.
I love that. Steve, you've been in so many different contexts. You've worked in different fields and in all these different places that I mentioned earlier. What does leadership look like in your context today?
The thing comes from the word lead. And the only way a leader, in my opinion, can be a true leader is if they're first leading themselves and living by example. Yeah. And not just live by example. It's when Harry met Sally, I want what she's having. You want to look at a leader and be inspired by their leadership, but also be inspired by the way they carry themselves throughout their life.
Yes.
It's not just, I walk out the front door or I turn up at the office and, hey, I'm this guy. And then all of a sudden I go home and beat my wife. It's no, you want to be an inspired leader from the inside out, and a full 24/7 leader and a full 360-degree leader. Now, there are leaders that are not that out there, but are sensational leaders, and they inspire people by what they do, not by, hey, look at me. I can tell people what to do.
Yeah, that's good. Have you seen your leadership change over time?
My leadership changes throughout the day. And yes, it has changed over time, but it hasn't changed over time.
Okay.
It's a leadership style that grows with me, but also adapts to the situation. And I've gone from, as I was running, I was actually a junior athletes track coach. And my leadership style for them was different to a senior athletes track coach, which is different to standing up in front of 1,000 people, getting them to do things in a room. So my leadership style is a style that I believe, and I work on, is to be the best adaptive leader and inspired leader for each current situation.
Yeah, I think the last few years have taught us all the importance of adaptation in leadership. The leaders who could not pivot and adapt, they're not leading today.
Well, the other thing is, and particularly in leaders that we see in, let's just say politics,
Sure.
a bad example, they're not looking far enough ahead. And they're not looking around them. They're very focused on their next steps. And we're just seeing the craziness that's going on in the UK right now. The funny thing was that somebody posted, I think it was 40 days ago, when what's her name took over, and they posted a lettuce, and they said, well, who's going to last longer, the lettuce or her? The lettuce actually lasted longer. It was a bit brown, but it lasted longer than the Prime Minister. But the big thing that they were saying with the new guy that got elected or appointed this morning, he will be the right guy to lead the party to the next election. So where are they looking? They're only looking at 2 years to get re-elected. They're not saying, he's the right guy to lead the country out of this mess. He's the right guy that we can all as a country get behind and follow. He's the right guy to score enough votes so that we get paid again for another term. Mm-hmm. And that really bugs the hell out of me. Mm-hmm. It is like, well, that's not leadership. That's just greed.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's self-serving, self-focused, right?
Totally. Yeah, totally. And there are so many, there are so many different ways of looking at that. There's so many different examples of that. It could be companies. Yeah, I'm the right guy to be the CEO. Not I've got the right vision and I'm the right leader to take this company to here. I'm the right guy to get the job. Mm-hmm. And when they get the job, they still could be the right person to lead it, but their focus is the next step. And that's where I see there are so many people that don't have a clear vision and they can't articulate it and demonstrate it well enough to get the right people to follow and say, yep, let's all go, and inspire internal leadership. A good leader should be able to inspire internal leadership with everybody that he works with.
You know, using your example, it makes me think of a contrast between focusing on just the next election with Queen Elizabeth, you know, who's been, you know, so much a part of all of our story and journey as we've watched her leadership, you know, from before my time, before I was born, right, into just recently when she passed away. Such a contrast between one who is focused on serving others and one who's just focused on what they're going to get or what they're going to do right this minute for the next election.
Yeah, I guess the only difference we could take out of that, she had a little bit more security than an election.
A little bit. Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. But again, when we find somebody that just stands up and is a true leader and can galvanize various parties, mm-hmm. whether it's politics, sport, religion, whatever it is, if they can pull the different parties together and inspire and lead them, that's a true leader.
Yeah. No, that's good. It's the influence, right?
Yeah.
It's like Maxwell says, leadership is influence. Nothing
Absolutely.
more, nothing less. And how are you going to use that influence for your own benefit or for the benefit of other people? Totally. You get to decide. You know, every leader that I talk to values reading and learning in some way. Is there a favorite book that stands out in your journey that you think I would really recommend that the leaders listening really dive into this book?
No, I can't bring it back to one. The story I tell about my reading program is being a sports jock. When I opened up the health club, I had pretty well a reading program of about a book a decade. It's interesting. I've got multiple books out there now, and I passed my high school English exam by 2/3 of a mark, and I think that in itself might have been a fluke. But I was given Think and Grow Rich for Christmas the first year I opened up the health club, which was only a couple of months after opening it, and I just absolutely devoured it in the 5-day break. I think I read it 2 or 3 times, and from then I've actually been devouring books or part books now, and that's a big thing. Is I don't need to read the whole book. I find what I need, I consume it, digest it, and then move on to whatever it is from there. Having said that, I'm always reading. I've always got a couple of books on the go, and it's whatever it is at the time. So a favorite one right now, not really. But the fact is, the answer is yes, you've got to be taking in great information and information that suits your learning style.
Yeah.
And suits what you need right now.
Yeah.
And that's the great thing is we've got that at our fingertips. We've got it on demand. We can read abstracts. We can watch videos. We could get to the heart and essence of the writer by watching a 1 hour video versus reading a book. So it's a different dynamics now. And it's a matter of, set a plan. What do you have to do and when? I've actually got times set aside. My Sunday afternoon, I'm quite fortunate. I'll just go upstairs, sit on my favorite chair, have a glass of wine, watch the sailboats go past, and then open up and do 2 hours of other people's training. Just sit, do it, and absorb and plan for the rest of the week. So it's putting the fuel back in whatever it is that you need at the time. And if you're open to it, it'll always turn up.
I love that. And I love that analogy of putting the fuel back in, because leaders are constantly pouring out, right? We're pouring out content. We're leading other people. We're encouraging them. We're coaching them. When are we getting fed? When are we refueling? You have to be intentional about that. It's not just going to happen. And I love that you've made this a regular part of your weekly rhythm.
What's the excuse to drink?
Whatever it takes, right?
Now, I want to share something with you on that. And as an athlete, I've seen this happen over and over again. And when I was writing my book, Exceed, How to Exceed Your Own Personal and Professional Expectations, I did some study on this. And there's a guy called Professor Ian H. Robertson, articulated it the best, that as animals, including fish, when we have had a win throughout history, evolution, whichever you want to call it was normally a kill. We got something to eat. That gave us a surge of testosterone and dopamine, the strength and the feel good. That gave us a physiological and a psychological boost. Be prepared to go on to the next and the bigger one, and the next and the bigger one. And we lose that as humans. And quite often we're in the factory, the conveyor belt of life, and we're not given that many wins. And in my book, in the goal setting and the management style, is you're better off to choreograph wins into people's KPIs and goal setting, so that when they get that win and they have continual wins, that's not saying go easy on them. It's set the goals, set the standards, set the KPIs that are high enough, yet achievable enough that they have the believability to give it that 100%, and then find that extra 0.5%, the 1%, the 0.5%, so they actually get in front of it.
That's good.
When they get in front of it, they're actually smashing through the goal with momentum, and they have the winning effect. They have that surge of testosterone and dopamine that gives them the psychological and physiological boost to go on to the next one, and then the next one, and the next one. If you've seen an athlete, and I've seen it time and time again, I've done it myself, that you're always just missing. You're getting the seconds and thirds and seconds and thirds, and all of a sudden you have a win, and you are unstoppable. And then you'll have 4, 5, 6 wins in a row. People that win a major in the golf, they'll win that, and then they'll just take off. So there's a lot of things in there that we can look at ourselves, and as leaders, and if we're putting the fuel back in, we need to look at, well, what are the goals? Instead of setting the big, hairy, audacious goals of this massive goal out here that you look at it and say, well, I'm not going to achieve it, but if I fall short, that's okay. So that's not a win, that's a loss. But if you can set the aspirational goal, but then you set the momentum goals. So when you hit that goal with momentum, you slingshot it onto the next one, and then you're onto the next one. And before you know it, you've actually hit the big, hairy, audacious goal without knowing it. It's like, well, I'm here. And that, to me, as a leader, we need to look after ourselves. We need to be able to choreograph and celebrate the wins, because that helps us help more people.
That's something that I focus on regularly with the clients that I coach, because what you focus on is what you're going to get more of. And so often leaders focus on the problems, what went wrong, and we focus on that. And guess what that means? That's what you're training your mind to focus on. You're training yourself to recognize that. I'm going to start by celebrating the wins. What went right? What can I celebrate? Start there, because I want to draw more of those. I want to train my mind to focus on those things, because that's what I want to reward.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Steve, if you could share, as we're wrapping up, if you could share one piece of advice with the leaders who are listening today, what would that be?
You know what? I'm going to go back to my 3 words for the year.
Yeah.
Believe, grow, and leverage. Believe that you actually can be more. Believe that you can be more than what you are. Because no matter whether it's physiological or psychological, we don't use 100% of what we've got.
Yeah.
We don't. So believe that you can grow as a person, grow as a leader, and grow those around you, and leverage.
Yeah.
Leverage the talents, the expertise, the knowledge of other people around you, and leverage whatever it is that you can. I was on my last call, we were talking about leverage, and I think it might have been Sir Isaac Newton said, "You give me a stick big enough and a lever big enough, I can move a mountain."
Yeah.
And that's what leverage is. If you apply and seek the right leverage, and you believe that you can actually get there, you will find the 0.5% and the 1% and things like that. But if you don't believe, you don't go looking. And that's the biggest thing. Believe that you can be more than what you are.
I love that. I know folks are going to want to stay connected with you as they've listened to this today, Steve. What's the best way for folks to do that?
2 areas. They can find me on LinkedIn. Very easy. Connect directly on LinkedIn. And please say that you came from here. It's just Steve Brossman. That's 2 S's on LinkedIn. And I'm pretty old fashioned. I'll actually answer an email if somebody emails me. God forbid. It's Steve at Steve Brossman. So it's first name at firstandsecond.com. That's nice and easy so I can remember it too. Just Steve at Steve Brossman. Drop me a note, and happy to connect.
Well, we'll have those links in the show notes so that our listeners can follow through on that. Thank you again, Steve, for being on the show today. This has been so helpful, and I'm so appreciative of your generosity in sharing from your own story and your advice for leaders in the context where they lead.
Mate, it's been an absolute blast. Really, really appreciate it. And I really do appreciate the work that you're doing, because a lot of leaders out there may feel alone. And by you providing insights from other people that may be just like them to help them on their journey, I'm sure they're appreciating it as well. And I certainly do. Cheers.
Thanks for joining me for this episode today. As we wrap up, I have a couple of requests for you. I'd love for you to do 2 things. First, subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss an episode. And if you find value here, I'd love it if you would rate it and review it. That really does make a difference in helping other people to find this podcast. Second, if you don't have a copy of my newest book, Catalytic Leadership, I'd love to put a copy in your hands. If you go to catalyticleadershipbook.com, you can get a copy for free. Just pay the shipping so I can get it to you, and we'll get one right out. My goal is to put this into the hands of as many leaders as possible. This book captures principles that I've learned in 20 plus years of coaching leaders in the entrepreneurial space, in business, government, nonprofits, education, and the local church. You can always connect with me on LinkedIn to keep up with what I'm learning and thinking about. And if you're ready to take a next step with a coach who can help you to intentionally grow and thrive as a leader, I'd be honored to help you. Just go to catalyticleadership.net to book a call with me. And stay tuned for our next episode next week. Until then, as always, leaders, choose to be catalytic.
Thanks for listening to Catalytic Leadership with Dr. William Attaway. Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts so you don't miss the next episode. Want more? Go to catalyticleadership.net.